The name of the piece is mainly untitled, but I had in parentheses Sonny, and Sonny is the actual person I painted, and I painted him quite a few times and different scales. That was the smallest one, which I believe that was 10 by 10 inches. The largest I've painted, Sonny's portrait, was a 36 by 48. So I painted him up 4 or 5 times, so he was my inspiration. Well, I'm always intrigued about having different opportunities, especially with showcasing with other artists that I don't even I might not know of at all, or maybe kind of know the work but never had met them. So I just feel like it's uh, it was an opportunity that I saw to enter my work, and especially something with that small. I don't ever, a lot of these smaller pieces I just kind of keep in my studio, and so I don't really see a lot of opportunities to enter. So I was really thrilled to see that, and I was really honored to be a part of it. You know, I think it's really interesting. As you can see, I normally work a little bit larger. This is 48 by 48. I usually don't work that large. Might be it's like 36 by 48 or so. I just kind of do a little range, but what I like to do is I don't like to get too comfortable. So that's why I've been pushing myself to work on paper and smaller formats, because it allows me to, how do I do something that I normally like to paint and I feel passionate about? How can I do it in a smaller scale? How might that change the energy, the conversation, the application of it, even the types of tools that I would use as well, because it all kind of changes when things get larger or smaller. I kind of have to adapt to those. Um, the environment here at the Livestock Exchange I've been here for like 13 years, and I really love the environment. It's very respectful. There's a lot of artists, a lot of creatives, but there's also a lot of unique businesses and local businesses as well that I feel feeds the energy of the whole building. And the studio space, I really love. I love the wood floors. It kind of reminds me of an older studio I had in my earlier years. So there's that sense of comfort, and kind of allows me to. I wish it was a little bit bigger, but it does allow me to kind of work different scales, larger, smaller, and still be able to store them here as well. It's a nice energy. Uh, Normally it's the things that we all kind of see, but we don't really take notice of it. It might be something out of our periph, or especially with my human forms and such. I kind of like to catch moments either by sketching or capturing it digitally, things I wouldn't normally be able to capture. And then also with my furniture, when I go outside of the figure, I was always starting to think, okay, how can I translate the conversation a little bit differently, but still kind of keeping true to myself? And that's when I started to get into the chairs, with the presence and absence of the human form. Having the furniture be a little bit more about, the painting about that particular object and the stories that's also kind of entwined with that, we can all have our speculations of how something maybe got there, but just kind of knowing that those stories exist is really interesting to me. But then it also brought into where I started introducing fawns, hummingbirds, crows, and where I was taking that presence and absence of the human form and merging it with the life of nature, and playing around with that theme of like that coexistence, the natural world with how they kind of have to live their life around the way humanity and society has kind of pretty much dictated the rerouting of the natural world. So I like to kind of play around with that theme as well. It's just something that's just awareness on my part, and then hopefully even on others as well. I try to paint often. And what I mean by often is like I'm in here, I try to be in here almost every day. And if there's a day that I can't be in here during the week, I come in on the weekend just to feel attached. Um, I, I also teach classes, so I've always wanted to be that instructor that was always working. So I feel like I have a pretty strong discipline in the painting for about 30 years, and just trying different things. And I just always make it, it's part of my life. Like if I go a couple weeks, I feel off, which I'm sure both of you feel that way too. So it's like that kind of like that blood in us creatives. Tools, I can show some of that. Well, actually, this is a sealed birch that I have recently been working on, just because I really love how, they're even cradled in the back, embraced. They have a nice solidness to them. They slip in the frames really nicely too, but they also, like when I'm done with each painting, I sand them down and I wax the edges, so they can easily just be on the wall, and they look kind of timeless, I feel. And then if people do want to frame them, I always suggest doing something that mimics the cleanness of the edge, maybe give it a little bit of a gap. But I really like the durability of painting on birch. The tools I like to work with are I'll just even kind of bring over some of my tools. But some of them are very conventional, and then some, I always start off with brushes. I like to have a different variety of scale. This is what I was talking about, like when you work, really small, you might not want to work with a brush this big. Maybe sometimes, it depends on how expressive you want something to be. But I even have some other brushes over here that, to get a little bit larger, go along with those larger formats that can really, allow for that brush mark to become really expressive and evident, and also really cover some surface as well. One of the things I really enjoy is I like to take print rollers, printmaking rollers, and I like to mix up my acrylic paint and run it across a couple times. And I like to take that and run it in certain directions to kind of see what I might get. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of like the experimentation of controlling something but not controlling something. So I kind of use this as a wet sponge to quickly erase anything that I feel like doesn't work. And one last thing I do like to use is, some of them still have paint on them, but these 3x5 cards, you can mold them different ways. I sometimes will also like to drag the paint onto the card and then kind of just give like a quick mark. I know I can't get with a brush, and I might not even know what I'm going to get anyway. But a lot of times, like even for instance this mark, I remember putting that down, and then that was using the edge of my paper with a little bit of that paint, just to kind of get something that it's kind of controlled, but it isn't. My commitment has always stayed the same. Being a dad shifted things and I always used to work at night. Now I try to work more during the day. But I used to work with, pastels and oils, so that kind of shifted how I worked. But I always found that I was always like, when I was in my 20s, just out of school, I would always sit and draw or paint. And then as I became older, I was like, why am I need to stand and be engaged with this. So I always like to, be up close and then step back, and then I can even open up that door and step even further back to really kind of get some depth on it. But it's the way I worked with pastels isn't the way that I work, with acrylic, and the same with oil as well. I mean, the oil is like a little bit more of the venting, and using certain mediums that you don't want to expose yourself too much on a regular basis. But so I would say that's probably how it's evolved. There's just kind of playing around with different mediums, and I don't really mix it up too much, except for like working on paper, and I like to do monoprints. I always had that ability and wanting to draw when I was younger. but I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. I think it was really as late as after high school that I really saw that there was opportunities. I went to a community college in St. Louis that allowed me to really experiment with like the fine arts, photography, a little bit of graphic design, even some illustration. And getting all that exposure allowed me to kind of gain some focus on schools outside the head of B.F.A. And they had like college days on campus. And I remember Chicago Art Institute and Kansas City Art Institute was one of the two schools. I really wanted to talk to both of them. And I got accepted at both, but I decided, I was weighing my options. I was like, well, Kansas City, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that, I could be a commercial artist or a fine artist and maybe make some money at it too. And I know it was Chicago, and I was dogging either school because they're both amazing. Chicago, I was like, well, I might just go into fine arts, and I don't know what that future might look like, which is nothing wrong with that. But I think going to the Art Institute, it really allowed me to figure myself out as an artist. And there's some things about illustration that I liked. And there was things that I didn't like. And I think doing both of them allowed me to kind of choose one over the other. And that's when I realized, it was probably always there. But I just needed to kind of maybe try both, where I was like, I think I'm just more of a painter. I think I'm just someone who just likes to do my own thing. That's over evolution of time for sure. I mean, I always had like certain artists that I like and certain expressive qualities within certain artists. And I feel actually the more I became mature, that's what I think my artists that I looked at, it kind of changed and allowed my work to change as well. But there was always that kind of like the hand of the artist type of thing that I always like to see drawings or works with line or ink or even just a brush mark. There was always, whether it was abstract or representational, figurative, whatever, those elements were the key elements for me. And not that I was trying to replicate it, but I think that's just who I am visually as a person. But I think it's also someone that, as a creative, that kind of likes to, that's my output.